Imam al-Barbahari, rahimahullah, he continued on what occurs here on page 369 as point number 70, that Imam al-Barbahari, rahimahullah, he said, وَالْإِيمَانُ بِأَنَّ الْمَيِّتَ يُقْعَدُ فِي قَبْرِهِ وَتُرْسَلُ فِيهِ الرُّوحُ حتى يسأله منكر ونكير عن الإيمان وشرائعه ثم تسل روحه بلا ألم ويعرف الميت الزائر إذا زاره ويتنعم المؤمن في القبر ويعذب الفاجر كيف شاء الله. He said, and to have Eemaan that the deceased will be made to sit up in his grave and his soul will be restored to him, in order that Munkar and Nakir should question him about Eemaan and its required duties. Then his soul will be gently removed from him without any pain. And the deceased recognizes the one who visits him. And the deceased recognizes the one who visits him when he visits him. And the believer will experience bliss in the grave, and the wicked will be punished as Allah wishes. So Shaykh al-Fawzan, hafidhahullah, he said in explanation of these 2 points, points number 70 and 71, he said his saying, وَالْإِيمَانُ بِأَنَّ الْمَيِّتَ يُقْعَدُ فِي قَبْرِهِ. He's saying, and to have Eemaan that the deceased will be made to sit up in his grave. He said, it is obligatory to have Eemaan that the deceased will be made to sit up in his grave, and his soul will be restored to his body, and 2 angels will come to him. One of them is Munkar and the other is An-Nakir. So they will both question him, and this is Fitnatu fil Qabr. This is the trial in the grave, and it is the most severe thing that will come upon the deceased. If he is saved from this trial, then he will be saved from that which comes after it. And if he is not saved from this trial, then he will be destroyed. There will be no salvation for him. The 2 of them will ask him about 3 matters. Man Rabbuk, who is your Lord? So the believer will say, Rabbi Allah, my Lord is Allah. Whereas the munafiq, the hypocrite, will say, La adri, I do not know. Then they will say to him, Ma dinuk, what is your religion? So the believer will say, my religion is al-Islam. Whereas the hypocrite and the doubter will say, La adri, I do not know. Then they will say to him, Man nabiyuk, who is your prophet? So the believer will reply, my prophet is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whereas the hypocrite will say, La adri, I do not know. And just as a small side point, then Shaykh al-Suhaimi, in his explanation, in his lessons on this, he mentions this will be the answer of the hypocrite and the doubter. I do not know. Even if in this world he knew the answer. If in this world the hypocrite knew what a Muslim says, but he will not be able to say it on that day. The only one who will be able to say that answer will be the true believer. Even the hypocrite who knew what the answer is in this life, he will not be able to say it on that day. Then Shaykh Fawzan said, so the believer will have his grave extended wide for him, and he will have bedding provided for him from paradise, and a door will be opened for him leading to paradise, and its pleasant wind and pleasant fragrance will come upon him, and he will experience bliss in his grave. Whereas the kafir, the disbeliever, and the hypocrite, his grave will be restricted upon him, and he will be given bedding from the fire, and a door to the fire will be opened for him, and its heat and its poisonous wind will come upon him. Again, as a small side point here, then you find all of this mentioned in the hadith of Al-Bara ibn Azib radiallahu anhuma, reported by Al-Bukhari as hadith 1369, and reported by Muslim as hadith 2871, in abridged form, and in longer form by Imam Ahmad in his Musnad, and by Abu Dawood in his Sunan, as hadith 4753. And also on this side point here, as for the angels being named as Munkar and Nakir, then that occurs in the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, reported by Tirmidhi as hadith 1071, declared authentic by Shaykh Al-Albani, with the wording, so hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, when the deceased is placed in his grave, or he said, one of you is placed in his grave, then two angels, black, blue, come to him. One of them is called Al-Munkar, and the other is called Al-Nakir. The hadith. Back to the explanation of Shaykh Al-Fawzan, hafidhahullah, then he said, in the continuation here, and this is the meaning of his saying, وَتُرْسَلُ فِيهِ الرُّوحُ حتى يسأله منكر ونكير عن الإيمان وشرائعه, and his soul will be restored to him, so that Munkar and Nakir can ask him about Iman, about true faith, and about its legislated duties. Again, a small side point here, by Shaykh Ahmad al-Najmi rahimahullah, he said in his explanation on this point that they will ask about Iman and about its shara'i, its legislated laws or legislated duties. And Shaykh Ahmad al-Najmi said, perhaps what he intended by this questioning, or perhaps what he intended by this is the general questioning. In the general questions that we've already heard, who is your Lord, what's your religion, who is your Prophet. He said, because I do not know anything from the Sunnahs which indicates that there will be questions about the details of Islam and Iman. I mean about that. I don't know anything authentic in the Sunnah that the angels will ask about the details of Islam and Iman. But rather, just the questions will be about in general, who is your Lord, who is your Prophet, what is your religion. And likewise on the point that came, ثم ترسل أو ثم تسل روحه بلا ألم, then his soul will be taken out of him again without any pain. And when questions are finished, his soul will be gently taken out of him without any pain. On this point, again Shaykh Ahmad said, Shaykh Ahmad al-Najmi rahimahullah, bila alam, without any pain, he said, meaning without the pain which occurred for him at his first death. When he died, and he experienced the pain of death. But here at this point, when the angels, when they questioned him, then his soul is taken out again. Then he will not at that point experience the pain of death there, and his soul is taken again from him. But then Shaykh Al-Fawzan, hafidhahullah, he said in his explanation, his saying, وَيَعْرِفُ الْمَيِّتُ الزَّائِرَ إِذَا زَارَهُ, And the deceased recognizes the one who visits him when he visits him. The deceased recognizes or is aware of the one who visits him when he visits him. Shaykh Fawzan said, and therefore it is legislated to visit the graves, because the deceased takes comfort in the presence of the one who visits him. And this is from the affairs of the barzakh, the intermediate period. In that period, in between the life of this world and the life of the hereafter, the barzakh, intermediate, the barrier period. We do not know about the affairs of the hereafter and the affairs of the intermediate period, except what is established by proof. Because it is from the ilm al-ghayb, it is from the knowledge of the hidden and the unseen, which is not known except by Allah, the Perfect and Most High. And it is not to be derived from this that anything can be requested from the deceased, such that it is said, since he knows the one who comes to him, then why shouldn't we request what we need from him? Shaykh Fawzan said, we say, this was not legislated by Allah, the Perfect and Most High. Nothing may be requested from the deceased. The companions, the Sahaba, the companions had not used to request anything from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though he was alive in his grave sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in a life of the barzakh, a life of the intermediate period, not the life of this world. And also a small side point here before carrying on, and again Shaykh Ahmad al-Najmi rahimahullah, he said with regard to this point, وَيَعْرِفُ الْمَيِّتُ الزَّائِرُ, and the deceased in the grave, he recognizes the one who visits him, recognizes and is aware of the one who visits him. Shaykh Ahmad said, this is based upon the authenticity of the hadith which occurs about that. But there is disagreement about its authenticity with regard to what I know. As far as I know, there's disagreement about its authenticity. Then they mentioned in the footnotes, the verifier Khalid al-Rodadi said, there are a number of ahadith which mention that the deceased recognizes the one who visits him when he visits him and takes comfort from his visit. However, nothing from them is authentic. Nothing from them is authentic. None of these narrations are authentic. And finally on this point, likewise Shaykh Salih al-Sahimi, hafidhahullah, he said in his explanation, this is something which I do not know any proof for, in the point that the deceased in the grave, he recognizes one who visits him. Shaykh al-Sahimi said, this is something which I do not know any proof for. Rather, what is indicated by the proof is just that he hears the footsteps, meaning the footsteps of those who depart after they are buried. That's all that we know in authentic texts, that the deceased hears their footsteps whilst departing. We don't know any more than that. Then Shaykh Fawzan, hafidhahullah, he finished this point by saying, he's saying, وَيَتَنَعَّمُ الْمُؤْمِنُ فِي الْقَبْرِ وَيُعَذَّبُ الْفَاجِرُ كَيْفَ شَاءَ اللَّهُ. And the believer will experience bliss in the grave, and the wicked will be punished however Allah wishes. Shaykh Fawzan said, from the fundamentals of Eemaan, true faith, is to have Eemaan in the punishment of the grave and in its bliss. Contrary to the Mu'tazila, those who deny this, they say the deceased in his grave is just the same as when we placed him in it. He receives no torment and no bliss, basing this or relying in this upon their intellects and what they see and their own thinking. And they do not believe in the ghaib, in the hidden and the unseen. The Shaykh said, as we heard when Shaykh Falah, Hafidahullah, was here, he said what they say is, meaning that they say, look, if we open a grave up and we look at the deceased, we don't see anything. We don't see him in any enjoyment, and we don't see anything from paradise there. And we don't see the opposite. We don't see any fire, and we don't see any of the like of that. So therefore they deny it. They say we rely upon what we can see and physically experience, and we don't see any of that. So they deny it. So as Shaykh Fawzan said, they do not believe in the ghaib here. They do not believe in the hidden and unseen. Then he said, an analogy is not to be made between this world and the hereafter, or between the hereafter and this world. So it is upon you to have Eemaan, true faith, in the ghaib, the hidden and the unseen. In other words, meaning that just because if we open a grave up, we don't see anything happening in that grave, it doesn't mean that we deny that he has been punished or feeling bliss. Shaykh Fawzan said, and the punishment of the grave and the bliss of the grave is established. Indeed, it is mutawatir in the ahadith. It's something that occurs at every level of transmission. In narrations, which are so many, that every level of transmission, there are so many people who report it, that it's impossible they could have got together and lied upon it. It's mutawatir that the deceased will either be punished in his grave, or otherwise he will experience bliss. So whoever denies the punishment of the grave, and he knows of the texts, and he knows of the proofs, then he is a kafir, he is a disbeliever. But as for the one who denies it on account of ta'wil, wrong interpretation, or taqleed, just blindly following somebody else in that saying, or al-jahl, or ignorance, he's ignorant of it, then this person, the truth is to be made clear to him. And if he then persists after it has been clearly explained, then he is judged to be a disbeliever.